Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed my other videos for Statecraft the game. Now in this final video, I'm just going to give you my final opinions of the game itself. Now I want to give a slight caveat before we go anywhere. This is a promotional copy. I got a prototype of the game. Matter of fact, it even says prototype on the box, so anything could potentially change with the game. So it's basically just my thoughts and opinions on what I got from the game itself so far. So the game of Statecraft is a very entertaining game based on a political theme, and it's got a lot of political theme to the game, where each player is playing a group of politicians trying to take away the supporters from the other player, creating a back and forth game where it has a lot of direct player interaction, which is something I really do enjoy in a lot of my games. One thing I'm not a huge fan of is multiplayer solitaire, which has been dubbed for a lot of games, where every player is just basically trying to build up their own kind of engine. There's nothing you can do to affect the other players. It's basically just a race to see who can be the first person to build the perfect engine, get all the victory points, and win the game. And Statecraft is definitely not one of those games. That's something I really appreciate about the game. It's something that I enjoyed about the game. Now, I'm not a big political person. I don't get too much involved in politics. As a matter of fact, in a couple of videos, I kind of said a lot of the terms wrong, and you probably noticed that, especially if you're somebody who's really much into politics. You probably noticed I may have screwed up a couple of things, and I apologize for those in advance. Again, I'm not a huge into the political terms. I mean, I follow politics, I vote and everything like that, but when it comes to specific terms, I'm probably not the person you want to start quoting, so that's probably one of my fallacies there, but oh well. That does just go to show you that even though you don't know much about politics, you can still have fun with the game of Statecraft. Now, Statecraft is a game that does play for 2 to 4 players, which is really good. And I have noticed that since there are multiple scenarios in the game, that the game does play differently at different player counts depending on what scenario you happen to be playing. Now, every one of those scenarios does have different victory conditions. Again, that does add a lot to the replay of the game. They're played differently, and every single player is going to be playing differently every time you play the game. But I did notice that some scenarios did seem to be better at different player counts. And as you play the game more and more and more, you're probably going to notice the exact same thing, that some scenarios are really good at 4 players. Some scenarios are better at 2 players, but that's kind of one of the advantages of the game. Some card games we buy, and they're really meant to be 2-player only games, even though they say to 2 to 4 players. And there's some card games that are much better for more players, even though they say they play for less than 2 players. Cool thing about Statecraft is, thanks to all the scenarios, it does play in the 2 to 4 player range very, very well. Thanks to all those scenarios, adding lots of different variety, different victory conditions you're going for, and different things are going to end the game that players have to be paying attention to constantly. So the cool thing here is that, there may be an ending victory condition, but you may not want to end the game too quickly because you may be able to bring the end game about, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win the game. So it's something you have to be juggling constantly, juggling what you're trying to do to defeat your opponents, to bring the end game route when you want the game to end versus ending the game when another player wants you to do so, handing the victory over to another player and losing the game. So that's kind of a cool thing there. There's also lots of variety with the way that the game is going to be played differently every time you play it. You can add in more chaos to the game by adding more of those event and emergency cards. You can lower the chaos by taking some of those cards out. Now, you may have noticed in the sample gameplay video, just due to the luck of the draw and the fact that I added a lot of those event cards in the game. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted those to come out during the sample gameplay. So people like that kind of chaos and a lot of variety could see that in the game and see that's something that they're going to appreciate. So I did shuffle in 20 of them. But if you don't like those emergencies, you don't like the randomness they add, or you don't like the fact that they can really break your strategy. I mean, you saw one emergency card which forced one player to start discarding candidates or politicians. Now, if you happen to have a strategy relying on certain politicians being in play and you get hit by one of those cards, that can be really, really damaging to your strategy. So the nice thing is that you can add more event cards if you enjoy that chaos and that randomness, or you start taking those event cards out if you don't like that chaos, you don't like that randomness, and you don't appreciate the fact that one of those cards can hurt you. So if you like the chaos, it's great. If you don't like it, take it out. That's one more option added to the game. So the game advertises that there's about 200,000 different varieties of ways you can play the game. And I'm not going to sit down and do the math, but I can tell you there's lots of variety with multiple faction leaders. There's multiple faction leaders that come in the game. You're not going to play the game the same way because there's multiple faction leaders, each one with their own special abilities, making the game play a little differently. There's multiple scenarios of the game. Multiple scenarios are going to be played differently, different victory conditions, and different ways you're going to play the game. So you're going to have a lot of variety there. And you're just going to have a lot of variety depending on what order the event cards come up, what order the emergency cards come up, and also just how many players you have playing the game. Now, one thing I must impress upon you about this game is this is not a multiplayer solitaire game. This is a game that has very direct player interaction. And if you don't like player interaction and you don't like the fact that one player can really screw up your strategies very easily just from an action card or just from an event or something like that, you may want to be cautious about this game. That's one big caveat I want to give about this game. I like player interaction. I like really direct interaction between multiple players. But I also have players in my multiple player groups who don't like that. They like the multiplayer solitaire. They like building up their engine, putting all their pieces, getting all their cards in a row, and just go, I win. And that's the kind of gameplay they like. And that's the kind of gameplay you like. You may want to give a second thought about Statecraft, because that is something that may frustrate a lot of players. And as a matter of fact, it did frustrate one of the players I play with, because they had a string of bad luck where a couple events hit them at the wrong time. They got hit by one emergency one and they weren't expecting it. And it pretty much set them out of the game, because we're close to ending the game at that point anyways. And those cards just happened to have the perfect timing, knocking them out, and they felt very frustrated by that. Again, it's something I enjoy. It's something a lot of players I play with enjoy, but if you're one of those players who don't like that, that's one big caution I have to caution you about this game. Now again, like I said earlier, Statecraft is a game coming up on Kickstarter. This whole video series is based on a prototype for the game. I hope you enjoy this video series. If you want to learn more about Statecraft, check out the Kickstarter when it goes live. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them in the YouTube comments down below. You can also feel free to email me at offtheshelfboardgamereviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this video channel, you want to help support this channel, I'm also up on Patreon. I'd appreciate your support. Your support can help bring out better camera equipment, better gear, and help bring out more games and more videos for all these wonderful games for this wonderful hobby. You can check that out, patreon.com/otsbgr. Hope you enjoy this video. Hope you enjoy this video series. As always, thanks for your support, and thanks for watching.